In 2019, a banana duct taped to a wall sold for $120,000. In 2024, the same banana sold for $6.2 million. Not a different banana, the same piece, same artist, same roll of duct tape. The banana itself rots in 7 to 10 days. When it does, the owner buys a new one from the grocery store and tapes it back up. What you're buying isn't the banana, it's a certificate, a piece of paper that says you own the idea of the banana. While people argued whether this counts as art, $100 billion worth of actual paintings, sculptures, and artifacts sat inside buildings most people will never see. Buildings you can walk past on the street, buildings with no signs, buildings where the art never arrives, never leaves, and never gets taxed. This isn't a story about art. It's a story about a door that opened in 1888 to store grain and never closed. Geneva, 1888. Switzerland built a warehouse near the border to store grain moving across Europe. The rule was simple. Goods in transit don't get taxed. No import tax, no VAT, no property tax. The assumption was that grain would sit there for a few weeks, then move on. But the law never said how long something could stay in transit. No one thought to define it. For decades, it didn't matter. Grain came and went. Then in the 1950s and 60s, someone realized, if you buy a painting in London, store it in Geneva, and sell it to someone in New York, you never pay tax in any of those places. The painting crosses borders without ever technically arriving. It stays in transit, permanently. The warehouse that was built for grain became something else. A vault, not for grain, for wealth. And in 2013, one painting proved how well this system works. The transit loophole. In 2005, a painting sold at an estate auction in New Orleans for $1,175. It was listed as a copy, a damaged one. No one paid attention. 8 years later, someone noticed the brushstrokes didn't match a student's work. They matched Leonardo da Vinci's. The painting was Salvator Mundi, savior of the world. In 2013, it was authenticated. Its value exploded overnight. It didn't go to a museum. It didn't go to a collector's home. It went to Geneva, to a Freeport, into storage. It sat there for 4 years. In 2017, it sold again for $450.3 million. The sale happened inside the warehouse. The painting never left. It went from one crate to another, from one owner to another. No VAT, no capital gains tax, no property tax. The estimated tax avoided, $165 million. And from one painting. Here's how the system works. You buy art in country A, you ship it to a Freeport in country B, but you don't import it. It's just passing through. You store it there. Years later, you sell it to someone in country C. The transaction happens offshore, inside the warehouse. The painting never touches the ground of any country, so no country can tax it. The door it entered through, the one marked in transit, never closes. It's still traveling, 14 years later. And it's not just one painting. The financialization of art. In the 2000s, something shifted. Art stopped being something you collected because you loved it. It became something you bought because banks would lend against it. A 2020 report from Deloitte showed that art used as collateral for loans increased 300% in a decade. And here's the new model. You buy a painting for $50 million. You store it in a Freeport. A year later, an appraiser, who works for your bank, says it's now worth $80 million. You use that painting as collateral to borrow $60 million. The loan isn't taxed, it's debt, not income. You take that $60 million and buy more art. You repeat. The paintings don't move. They sit in climate-controlled crates, stacked in rows in warehouses that look like airplane hangars. But on paper, they're traveling. And because they're traveling, they don't exist. Not to tax authorities, not to the public, not to museums. Museums can't compete anymore. A Basquiat painting that sold for $20,000 in the 1980s sold for $110.5 million in 2017. Museum acquisition budgets, $5 to $10 million per year. They can't even bid, so the art disappears. Into private hands, into Freeports. The public never sees it. Geneva alone is estimated to lose 300 million Swiss francs in tax revenue every year. Governments know this. In 2016, the Swiss government studied the Geneva Freeport to calculate the loss. The results were classified. The reason given: revealing contents would compromise client privacy. Translation: we know how much we're losing, we just can't say it. Invisible subsidy. There are two art worlds now. One you can see: museums, galleries, public exhibitions. One you can't: Freeports, warehouses, crates. The invisible one is bigger. An estimated $100 billion in art sits in Freeports worldwide. If that art were subject to a 1% annual property tax, governments would collect $1 billion a year. If those transactions were taxed, 20% VAT to 28% capital gains, the total avoided over the past decade is roughly $48 billion. That's not money the rich are hiding. It's money that schools, infrastructure, and public services never received. It's not a crime. It's a structure. The law created a door for grain. The market walked art through it. No one broke the rules. The rules just never closed the door. And when one country tried to close it, the market didn't reform. It moved. Case study: Mexico's 70% market crash. In 2013, Mexico passed an anti-money laundering law. It required art galleries to report any transaction over $32,500. Buyers had to show ID prove where the money came from. The goal was to stop drug cartels from using art to clean cash. It made sense. It seemed reasonable. Here's what happened. In 2013, Mexico's art market brought in $60 million. In 2014, it brought in $18 million. A 70% collapse in 1 year. 30% of galleries closed within 2 years. The buyers didn't stop buying art. They just stopped buying it in Mexico. They went to Miami, New York, Geneva, places where the questions weren't asked. The law didn't stop the system, it relocated it. Countries that demand transparency lose the industry. Countries that don't collect fees but lose tax revenue. Mexico chose transparency. It lost the market. Switzerland didn't. It kept the Freeport. And while Mexico's galleries went dark, the Freeports expanded. The expansion, who benefits? In 2010, Singapore opened a Freeport. They called it the Geneva of Asia. In 2014, Luxembourg opened one, a €100 million facility, 22,000 square meters. In 2015, Delaware, inside the United States, opened its own. By 2024, there were over 30 Freeports worldwide: Geneva, Singapore, Luxembourg, Delaware, Beijing, Monaco. Here's who benefits. Freeport operators charge $3 to $5 per square foot per month for storage. Multiply that by millions of square feet. It's a steady income. Auction houses, Christie's, Sotheby's, built showrooms inside the Freeports. You can view art, bid on art, buy art, all without it ever leaving transit. Lawyers, appraisers, insurance agents, an entire ecosystem built around things that never stop moving. And the people who own the art, they don't need to love it. They don't even need to see it. They just need it to hold value and stay in motion. Here's who doesn't benefit: emerging artists. Collectors who buy from Freeports don't hang art on walls. They lock it in crates. Local galleries. Why? They can't compete with a system that erases taxes, tax authorities. They lose revenue they can't even measure because the contents of Freeports are private. Even governments don't know what's inside, and the people who do know aren't allowed to say. The banana makes sense now. So, the banana. 2019, it sold for $120,000 at Art Basel, Miami. It went viral. People laughed. People were angry. This isn't art, they said. It's a joke. 2024, the same piece sold for $6.2 million, 50 times more, in 5 years. The buyer was Justin Sun, a crypto entrepreneur. He announced he would eat the banana, and he did, on camera. But here's what he actually bought. Not the banana, not the duct tape, a certificate signed by the artist, Maurizio Catalan. That certificate is now a proven asset. It has a price history. It has auction records. It has credibility, which means it can do what the Salvator Mundi did. It can be stored in a Freeport. It can be appraised again and again. It can be used as collateral for a loan. It can be resold, offshore, in transit, untaxed. The banana rots, but the certificate doesn't. And once something enters the high-value art system, its price can't go down. If it does, the whole structure shakes, because banks have lent money against it, because appraisers have certified it, because other collectors have bought similar pieces at similar prices. If one painting drops in value, loans get called, appraisals get questioned. The system has an incentive to keep prices high, even when the asset is a banana, even when it's absurd, because the absurdity isn't the point, the infrastructure is. The banana is worth $6.2 million because the door is still open, and no one wants to close it. A banana worth $6.2 million isn't absurd. It's the logical outcome of a system designed in 1888 to store grain. The system wasn't built to hide wealth. It was built to move goods. But over time, the incentives shifted, and no one updated the rules, because updating the rules has consequences. If you close the Freeports, the art doesn't stay, it moves, like it did in Mexico. Capital doesn't reform, it relocates. If you demand transparency, the market crashes. Not because the art loses value, but because loans are based on appraisals, and appraisals are based on confidence. And confidence is based on the assumption that the system won't change. If you force everything into the open, loans default, galleries close, auction houses lose commissions. Financial contagion spreads. So the Swiss government studied the Geneva Freeport in 2016. They calculated the cost. Then they classified the results, because knowing the cost isn't the same as being able to fix it. The trade-off is simple: transparency and fairness. But lose your status as a financial center, or keep the Freeports, and accept that $100 billion is invisible. There's no third option, because if Switzerland closes the door, Singapore keeps theirs open. If the US cracks down, Luxembourg doesn't. The system doesn't break, it migrates. In 2013, a painting crossed the Swiss border. 14 years later, it's still in transit, still traveling, still untaxed. This is how $100 billion becomes invisible. Not by breaking the law, by staying in motion. The door stays open, not because no one wants to close it, but because closing it would crash everything built around it. The banana cost $6.2 million, but it's not about the banana. It never was. Slow zoom out, Geneva Freeport from a distance. A massive building, gray, concrete, no signs. Text fades in, $100 billion inside, then fades out. Cut to street level. People walking by, normal day, cars passing. No one looks at the building. No one knows what's inside. The camera holds, silence, then fade to black. This video explained a system. It didn't tell you what to do about it. That's intentional.